I met one of your fans, Mike, from WWL on a way back from Las Vegas. 4-hour flight. As I said, you get to know somebody when you're 3 inches away from them.
Yeah, you get to know them pretty good. And so some you'd rather not, some you, it's interesting, to say the least.
No doubt. Mike, how long have you been with WWL?
27 years.
Okay. Well, yeah, this guy was pretty close. He said, "Yeah, I remember when he first came on." So this guy was.
Yeah. It's I started with Hap Glaudy when he was on, and then after Hap passed away, I was with Buddy Diliberto, and now with Bobby and Deuce and Zach Streif and Christian. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Been a while.
Gotcha. What do you expect from the Saints in 2019?
They're a talented team. You never can tell about health, and I think that's always a big part of the NFL. Who survives, at the end. Long schedule, but this team really talented on the offensive side of the football. The offensive line play is critical for them. I like the addition of Jared Cook at tight end. Perfect fit for what they want to do offensively. And on the defensive side of the football, I think that's where it's going to cut. Can they get a pass rush? In this league, it's about having a guy that can throw the ball, and secondly, having a guy that can put that guy who can throw it on his butt. So can they get a better pass rush? And I think that's the key to them to win it all, is getting that consistent pass rush from week to week in the NFL. Nothing wins a game in the fourth quarter more than a pass rush. Bottom line in the NFL. Too many close games, and many times you see a team winning by 10, 12 points, 4 minutes, 5 minutes left. The opposing team's got the ball and can't put a pressure on him, and, he starts to pick you apart. It's a little bit different than college football. But they in the hunt. They're a very good football team, and then they in the hunt. For this team, I think for Sean Payton, it's battling the mental ditch of what has happened to end your season the last 2 years. You lost on a crazy play in Minnesota 2 years ago. It was a miracle, but miracles do happen. And the guy made a great play and ended up getting into the end zone, Diggs, for the Vikings. And then this year, is what it is. Lost on a controversial play that didn't get called. And it's getting over that. And people, a lot of people across the country tell me, well, you just got to jump that ditch. You got to get over it. And I tell them, hey, tell me something about your life. Was it that easy to get over? Maybe it's a relationship, job loss, something that happened bad. How long did it take you to get over it? It's not overnight. And sometimes it does affect your team. And I'm not sure that's not what's happened with Atlanta. What's happened with the Falcons. 28-3 lead over New England and lose it in the fourth quarter, and they've never been able to jump that ditch.
Mike, I want to ask you about quarterbacks. What becomes when you've got a Drew Brees and you know what he can do, you know how talented he is, but it's the chess match within the game. Defensive coordinator trying to scheme against Drew Brees. It's a defensive coordinator like Dave Aranda trying to scheme against Tua Tagovailoa. How do you take a great quarterback and take that next step?
Well, with Drew, he wants you to blitz him. That's what he wants you to do. Because if it's Drew Brees, if it's Tom Brady, you name it, the veteran quarterbacks, he wants you to blitz him. Because he knows where to go with the hot read. And in college football, I think it's that sort of thing too. I think, if you got a top quarterback, he wants you to send extra people because he's going to find that open guy. He knows who to go that check down. So it's sort of trying to take away one bit and a piece of your lineup and forcing you to do or go to a direction where you're not really sure if that guy can make a play or not. And it's funny you asked that question because Taysom Hill and I, we did an event who's backup quarterback for the Saints, plays special teams, plays receiver, you name it. He does it all over. And we were talking about Joe Brady and him leaving the Saints, and now, he's with the LSU now and helping Steve Ensminger on the offensive side of football. And he brought up a great comment to me that, he says, what's going to be interesting to watch that occur is plays you call for Drew Brees, he makes them because he's Drew Brees. Now, can Joe Burrow make that play? Does he know what to do with the ball? Does he know where the hot read is? And so I think in the NFL, it's all about taking away the biggest weapon you have on offense and forcing you to do without that weapon and winning with someone else. And in college football, I think for most teams, you take away the running game and force them to throw, most passers can't do it. They can't do it from play to play. They'll make a mistake, either from a coverage standpoint or they can't get away from the blitz. It's a totally different game from college to the pros, where I think in the pro game, you try to blitz a guy like Brees and Brady, you're in for big trouble because they know what to do with it. In the college game, that's not necessarily the case. I think in the college game, it's making a team one-dimensional, taking away the running game, forcing them to throw the ball.
Mike, is the quarterback the most important position regardless of sport? You could go to basketball, you could talk about the point guard. You could go to baseball and talk about the pitcher. But across the sport, if you don't have a good quarterback, I don't know if you can win games.
I think it's the most important position in any major sport, at the quarterback position in football. I think it's the toughest to play mentally today. What they throw at you. I know in talking to Archie about it, he told me, what Eli does today and what Peyton did, it's far different from him. He said, we had a few different defenses that you sort of looked at and you sort of knew how to get around. Like he said, today everything is hybrid. They're throwing things at you every down that's different. And he said, to be honest, the college game's starting to get that way too, where they're throwing you a lot of different looks. And so it's becoming much harder to play. Now, I will say, I do think because of 7-on-7, it is becoming a position that is easier to play earlier in your college career and earlier as a professional because you've got a lot more experience throwing the ball. But it's the most difficult position as far as I'm concerned in any major sport to play because of the challenges that you have, the different looks that you're getting, and the fact that we live in a little bit different world. Whenever you make that choice that you're going to become that player at that position, at quarterback, you take on the responsibilities of that position too. And you get a lot more credit than you should when you win, and you get a lot more of the blame than you should when you lose. And you're linked in the chain with the head coach. And how that coexists and everything else. So there's a lot of complications. We live in that social media world where, you can go 27 for 30 throwing the football, and all people want to talk about is the 3 incompletions.
Well, here in Tuscaloosa, 170 days ago, we're only talking about the 2 interceptions. We haven't talked about the great throws that he able to make to keep his team somewhat into the third quarter. We talk about the 2 interceptions where those safeties pulled over and were able to take it. One of them take it to the house.
Yeah, and so that's the nature of the position. Once you decide that that's what you're going to do, You accept that. That's part of the game, and everybody's the armchair quarterback. They know what you should do, and how. And come on, you're human. You're gonna make mistakes, and that's just part of the world of that position. But you can't tell that to that guy sitting, in his mama's garage, or he's playing with his cell phone, watching on TV, or whatever. He's gonna vent that something went wrong. And it's, head coach and the quarterback's going to get the bulk of that. And in today's world, how mentally tough you can be to accept it. It's a big challenge today. And I agree with Archie. It's a much tougher position to be in, because, they didn't have that back years ago, where every little challenge can be looked at. Every little piece of the puzzle is looked at, where wasn't maybe that case when he was playing, and so it's a different world, because we're talking about his grandson Archie, who's at Isadora Newman today. He's 14 years old, and the challenges he faces as a high school player, not only playing but also courting that Manning name at quarterback. So it's a different world, totally.
Like, I want to stick to a kid that really, I think, hinges on the success of Alabama's defense, and a product that's right there from your area, Dylan Moses. Alabama needs an alpha dog on that side of the football. They need a guy to take charge on that defensive side of the football. When you look at Dylan Moses, do you see enough there to look at him and go, yeah, he can be that typical Nick Saban type linebacker on that side of the football?
He's been in the limelight a long time. And, he's this isn't new to him. He was on the cover of ESPN, the magazine, when he was, 16, 17 years old. He was one of the most highly recruited football players from this region. Great talent. People have asked me to compare him to Devin White. He's a little bit different player than Devin, and it's amazing when I watch Devin play. He was a former high school running back. Wasn't necessarily thrilled about being moved to linebacker, but him and I had that conversation. He hadn't even hit the field yet, and he was talking about, man, listen, I still think I can play running back, and my thing, I didn't tell him this, but my first thought is, have you looked at that roster and saw, they got Leonard Fournette and Darius Geis and Darrell Williams and, those guys on this team? And all of a sudden he blossomed as a sophomore. The light came on for him. And I think the same sort of Dylan Moses is in the same situation where he is a tremendous athlete who can run and cover a lot of ground. And I think this is the year he grabs the bar as far as being the leader, because physically he's what you're looking for. There's nothing he can't do out on the field. From a standpoint of playing to run well, he can run east, west, north, south. He's got it. He can drop back in coverage. He can blitz. And if he can stay healthy, he's in for a huge season. I mean, he is a super talented young man. And he's had the weight of being that heavily sought-after player for a long time. And I think he's fixing to click it up a notch or two. He's a special player at linebacker. I think this is the year for him. I think he blows it up.
Mike, you look about the Manning Passing Academy. And I believe that's next week. Is it right? Is it not? It's next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Is that right?
We start the line camp Saturday, and then it starts next week. Yeah.
You're talking about a value for those college quarterbacks to be able to tap into all three Mannings, Archie, Eli, and Peyton, and understand that they played the game at a high level for a long length of time. I don't know if you could pay for consulting like that.
Everybody talks about how the high school kids look at them. The biggest, thrill for me is to watch the college quarterbacks listen to. They have on Thursday, all the counselors, they throw the ball. So all the college quarterbacks, they go out and throw it. And it's an interesting watch because you throw into receivers you never dealt with before. These are guys from Southeast Louisiana, Nicholls State, Tulane, LSU. An occasional pro player will come in to help, but you're not throwing to your receiver here. And how well they can sling it. And it's interesting to watch them throw it, but also how Peyton and Eli interact with them. And it's to see them almost in awe, of watching, others throw it and then them get a little bit of consulting from the Mannings on how to do it right. And Peyton, man, he ain't afraid to bite his tongue to tell a college quarterback, what he's doing wrong. He's in there, fundamentals and with his footwork and everything else. And for them, they try to soak it up, almost like osmosis, that you can learn something from being around guys that have won the big enchilada in the NFL, won the biggest games, played in all these huge outings, and it's I think such a thrill for them to be around that talent. And then there's the dads of players. This was 3 years ago. We had Dan Marino and Drew Bledsoe here because their sons were here. Jerry Jones had his grandson here. In fact, Jerry and I stood up next to one another and watched his grandson in the press box the Saturday. And so you have all these guys, and not only do you have the Mannings, but you also got some of the legends around, former guys that either had their kids or their grandkids around. And so, yeah, it's a big thrill for them to be around that and to kind of soak it up. And knowing you're in that list, and I did this last year, of the 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL, 23 of them have attended Manning, either as a counselor or as a teenager.
Wow. Solid numbers there, Mike.
Yeah, that's and they don't. One thing, Archie, and it was Peyton's idea to do the camp. Okay, he's the one who saw games where, a team's getting beat 52-10, and they throw 8 passes, and Peyton said, that's unacceptable. We have to have a situation where we have a camp where we can maybe help the high school quarterbacks in the pitch and catch game. And Archie sort of set it up, and it's moved around. It started at Southeastern and at Tulane, and then now at Nicholls. But it's really not a camp to say go after the elite players. They've had some here, but it's really a camp to just teach fundamentals. And we've got a picture, and it's a few years old now, of Archie talking to a group, and there's a young man standing off to the side, just sort of staring at Archie. And that guy was a 16-year-old Russell Wilson.
Wow.
And Russell made the comment when he was here, I wasn't a highly recruited player. Teams looked at me as much for baseball as it did for football. And it's to hear their stories. Some of them super highly recruited guys. Some of them none. They had a young man 2 years ago who stood up and he said, I'm 15 years old. He was from California, and he had 18 offers already. And he said, how to handle recruiting. And, Peyton sort of went into his story about how he felt about handling recruiting. And Josh Allen, was there, who was first-round pick of the Buffalo Bills. But if you know Josh's story, he only had one offer coming out of high school. So, Peyton throws it to Josh, and Josh was like, man, you asking the wrong guy. There's no way I can tell you how to handle it because I only had one offer. And so he threw it to Baker Mayfield. And Baker was, wait a minute, I was a walk-on at Texas Tech. He said, you better ask Sam Darnold. Well, Sam, I don't know. Sam made the comment. I think he had over 40 offers. So, he gave a little longer answer. But here was the best part of the expression on Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield's face about how to handle being a highly recruited quarterback, and neither one of them were. So they threw it to Darnold. And yet you get that every year. You've got some guys that are super highly recruited and others don't get much of a sniff. And it's you get the wide range here of that. Even at the most important position, it's not always that five-star guy. Sometimes it is, but you got a lot of different stories in between.
Mike Detillier, WWL 870 out of New Orleans, NFL talent evaluator, NFL draft expert, college football and NFL analyst. Always great time we catch up here in Tuscaloosa, Mike. Thank you again for being a part of the show.
Appreciate it, Ryan. Thank you.